Hello YouTube! Today was supposed to be my final college class of 4 years at the Fashion Institute of Technology, but thanks to New Jersey Transit, power issues, and trains breaking down, I did not go to school today. So I decided instead to film my portfolio review that I've been waiting on for months and months. And now that I am officially finished with my degree but not yet graduated, I thought now would be the perfect time. And if you are not at all interested in hearing me ramble on about my projects over the past 4 years, you can skip right ahead to the technical design part, the part that you're here for. So yeah, skip on ahead if you're just a prospective technical designer looking for more information. So I wanted to start with a quick introduction to who I am and why I went to FIT. So I'm from New Jersey. I'm the daughter of a tailor, and I've been sewing since middle school. It's something that I love to do. As a child, I was always creative. I was always making things. I wanted to be an inventor when I was a kid. And so I was able to find that outlet through sewing at a very early age. And when I was in high school, I started to work for my father at his shop. I learned how to do customer service, how to perform alterations on everything from prom gowns to suit jackets to men's shirts. And I discovered that I really, really liked the business. When I was 15, I visited FIT for the first time and decided to apply for their pre-college program. And that's when I got this sweatshirt 8 years ago. The pre-college program at FIT basically is a series of Saturday classes throughout one semester offered to high school students who are interested in investigating all different areas of fashion, design, sewing, business, what have you. So I began pre-college at FIT, and I did 3 semesters of pre-college in preparation to create my portfolio for application to the school. I took the first level of the fashion illustration course. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But I took the first level of that as a sophomore, and then the next level in my junior fall semester, and then the final level in my junior spring semester. And that was the portfolio class where the professor gives you guidance on how to build up your portfolio. So I have my computer here to show you most of my work, but I'll probably pull out a couple things in the process. I applied for FIT's fashion design program for the incoming class of 2019. Now, the application for fashion design at FIT is a bit more stringent than other schools in the city. FIT is a state university of New York, and so the state schools have specific requirements for their art and design programs. Other schools like Parsons and Pratt only wanted to see general visual media, and this might be something that you've heard in other videos for other people that have applied for different schools in New York City. But FIT has very specific requirements. So I'm going to show you my application portfolio if you are currently in the process of applying for the associate's degree in fashion design. Now, you'll see here there's this mix and match collection. So the requirement for this is to have basically 4 garments that will create at least 2 outfits. So my topic, I created this in pre-college, was Andaluza. So it's based on the aesthetics of Andalusia, Spain. Here were my first 2 figures. So they're sharing a blouse, but one has a suit and the other one has a skirt. And then here are my second 2 figures. So these 2 would also be sharing a blouse, but one with a pant and one with a jacket and a skirt. This is crucial to remember. When you are making your flats, you want to make sure that they're as symmetrical as possible. You can use tracing paper and draw one side and trace the other side. And they require back flats. So front flats aren't required. But it's super important that you know how to identify your fabrics. So, for example, here I put rayon satin. Rayon is the type of fiber. Satin is the type of textile. I did the same thing here. I did back flats, and then I identified all of my fabrics. I also went to the fabric store. This was in the days before I knew how to look for fabric online, and I actually went to the store and swatched them and did 2-inch swatches, because my professors were really strict about everything being done the traditional way. That's another thing about FIT. When you get there, they're going to teach you very traditional illustration methods and fabric swatching methods, exactly the way they've done it for many decades. And honestly, I think that preps you to be able to work digitally better if you already know how to work with paper and fabric. So that's the mix and match collection. Also required in the application is that you show a variety of other fashion figures, at least 4 of them. So I used a project for my very first semester at Precollege that was based on the Beatles. And what we had to do was design a collection for a specific brand. So we had to research that brand and their aesthetic and then adapt that into our collection as though we were designing for them. So I designed this Twist and Shout collection based on the early Beatles for J. Crew. Here it is my mood and fabric board. This I did literally cutting and pasting on boards because, again, the professors are going to be as old-fashioned as possible. And then here are my 3 figures for that project. J. Crew being preppy and putting a big emphasis on simple silhouettes but interesting textiles. I made sure to adapt that into this collection. So actually, this is how I submitted these figures. This was the original, and then this is how I submitted them when I actually applied for the program. So obviously I did put them into Photoshop to clean them up a little bit, and I added back flats because back flats are always, again, super crucial. This is another one of the figures that I submitted. So that was 3 figures with the Beatles collection, and then this was 1 extra one to fulfill the requirement for 4. This one is based on Van Halen's Frankenstrat guitar. You could tell that I'm a big fan of rock music and red, white, and black as a color scheme. And for this, I actually used vinyl that I swatched from a novelty fabric store. This one was a lot of fun to design, and I wanted to submit this one in particular because you have to use specific rendering techniques in order to render the shininess of the vinyl, right? You can't just lay down your marker colors and call it a day. You actually have to leave patches of negative space as white, because if you're thinking about a vinyl bodysuit going down the runway, there's going to be bright white reflections from the lights. So I wanted to showcase that rendering technique. This prom gown is my final figure of illustration, so it was my 5th extra fashion figure. This is the original sketch and design idea for my prom gown, which I'll show you in a minute. I used a poly brocade and poly chiffon and poly satin for the skirt, and I wanted to show the layering of colors using markers and Prismacolor pencils. Buy Prismacolor pencils as soon as you can, artist grade. They are the best pencils. They lay down over markers. They lay down well over just about any medium. I know it's $1.50, but invest in Prismacolors. They're definitely worth it. So this is the centerpiece of my entire portfolio. It probably took about 50 hours. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I had a lot of help from my dad and the tailors that worked for him. I had to undo and redo a lot of my work. So my inspiration was mid-century prom dresses. I wanted to do it in an alternative color, so I used copper. I think the fabric quality turned out really nice. That's one of my senior photos. And so if you have the chance to put a lot of energy and effort into creating a larger garment than just a simplicity pattern, go for it. Challenge yourself. It's not necessary, but it's definitely a benefit. There is a second garment required for the portfolio, so I chose to do something that I had made before the prom dress while I was still kind of learning how to sew, and that is this cotton dress. I used, I think it was a Simplicity or McCall's pattern. I chose this one because I could showcase gathering, elastic sewing, binding on the sleeves, you'll see here. I have this dress somewhere and I was looking for it, but I can't find it at the moment, but I keep it as a memento of my sewing ability at the time. You can see that threads not matching, gathers are uneven, construction is not as good as I would like it to be, but everybody starts somewhere, and it's important to showcase that. So I think it's pretty decent, especially for a first dress. I got into the Fashion Design Associates for Applied Science degree and began my semester with foundational courses. One was called Visual Design Concepts, where we learn how to do proper fashion illustration. Another one was Digital Design, where we learned how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. We had a draping class where we learned how to drape muslin on a form and make a pattern out of it. And then we finally had a materials and construction class, which was all focused on materials and construction, cutting and sewing. So here is my first collection that I ever did for Visual Design Concepts. The first project is a swimwear collection. So you see the date here, and I had my professor tell us, never put the date on it because you're going to date yourself. But I did it anyway, and it's kind of ironic that I put summer 2020 before even knowing what summer 2020 was going to look like. These are my figures. So I did a one piece, a bikini, and then a legging and like a rash guard, I guess. I did two other stylized two pieces. And then here's my fabric page. So I used a variety of spandex. I forgot to mention, my very first professor in pre-college was also my first professor in college. So I loved him. He was my favorite visual design professor because you had to meet his expectations and exceed them, but it wasn't difficult because you knew exactly what he expected. He never made it difficult. So he really shaped me up when it came to illustration and drawing because he had certain standards and he was very clear about it, and he really wanted to see us all succeed, and I felt like his critique was so insightful and so balanced. The next project for that semester in that class was to research Chanel. So we had to go to the stores, we had to go to a flagship store, and then we had to go to a department store and compare prices of all different categories of clothes. So again, this isn't just a visual design class. You're really learning how to do brand and market research, which I think was really important. So then we had to do research on Chanel herself, and we had to write an essay about her. Based on that research, we made a project. So each one of us had to design a collection for Chanel. My collection is called Onna Bugeisha, and it was based on these Japanese female warriors during the medieval period, and they're kind of mythological but kind of historical at the same time. So I just found the concept extremely fascinating. Here were my fabrics. I had a lot of fun sourcing these. It's a combination of silks and polyester. It's there's a knit boucle in here. There's a knit crinkle jersey. There's brocade, twill. I have this wooden kind of bamboo ring in here. I have a metallic button. And then here are my figures that I did on paper. The professor also encouraged us to do unique shoes and handbags. He was like really big on that. Shoes, handbags, and hair have to be all very wrapped into the theme because you can't have just blah models with fabulous clothes. Here I did a suit, a skirt suit. This one is a jacket with a turtleneck and pants. And then this is an evening gown with a shawl over it. And then here is a knit boucle suit. So again, playing into Chanel's hallmark, which is the boucle and tweed suits with the square pockets. You can see I even incorporated the bamboo ring into the belt here and the buttons. And then we had to do flats. We had to do all of our flats on paper. I don't know how it is nowadays for freshmen, but we had to do all of our flats on paper. And I had many late nights of screaming and throwing the pencil and paper across the room. That's Visual Design Concepts. Very enjoyable class, and you go through 3 levels of that within the Fashion Design Associates. Next, I'm gonna show you my digital design class work. This was the very, very first Photoshop project that we had to do. I can't even remember what the theme requirement was, but mine was based on on the moon and space, and I had never really touched Photoshop before. And obviously this is a freshman class. We learned how to put colors into a existing vector, kind of. And then we had to create textiles. So these would be textiles that would be woven or printed, as in the case of the moons here. So we learned how to do repeating patterns and plaids. Yeah, these were all done on a pixel grid first, and then applied to a larger field. So again, even though we were fashion design, not textile design, we still had to learn the facets of all of the things that are involved in fashion design. This is the second project in the Photoshop section of the digital design class. We had to create textiles and then impose them onto figures using Photoshop. So my theme was my old New York. I took a personal photography journey through the Lower East Side. Here's my color page. And then here are my fabrics. So you see stripes, plaids, and a print, or 2 prints at least. Here are my figures. You'll see the bicycles here, all the different plaids here. For the second half of the semester, we learned Illustrator, so we had to create flats using Illustrator. So these are my first Illustrator flats with all of the colors. And then here they are, black and white. Finally, for the final portion of this class, we focused on Illustrator only. So we had to do a collaboration between a luxury design house and a different brand. So I chose to do Gucci designing for Burton. We had to create a whole bunch of merchandising objects, like the tag that would get sewn into the clothes, the zipper. I designed a snowboard as well, a hang tag, and the bag that it would come in. Here was my mood board, and I remember being up at 2, 3 in the morning in the computer labs working on this. And then here's the actual garments. It's only one outfit, but this whole thing was drawn and then filled in within Illustrator. That's it for the digital design class. Next up, we have materials and construction. This was a pretty basic class. We had to make a skirt at the beginning of the semester, but then the final project for the class was a collared shirt. Again, I have the skirt somewhere, and well, I'm not going to waste my time looking for the skirt. But side note, here's the physical, just one of the physical pieces that I have. This is the illustration of my prom gown. For this project, everybody made the same collared shirt. We could just choose the fabric that we wanted to do. So we learned how to do a princess line, how to do a basic camp collar, all of that. Finally, in the draping class, we designed a whole bunch of stuff. We learned how to do basic bodices and dresses. So this was one project that I did. I sketched the dress, and then we draped a half body in muslin. I went for that parallelogram waistline. It's kind of a cool pattern now that I think about it. My final dress for the draping class is this one. So I did a half muslin, but we had to display what fabric we would use. So I used this two-toned lame. There's the sketch. Kind of sci-fi. In my second semester of the Fashion Design Associates, I had the second level of visual design concepts. I had the second draping class and the second materials and construction class. And then I had a couple other classes on the side that are either related area or gen ed. That semester I took a fashion history journaling sort of class and a life drawing class, which was pretty fascinating. So let's start with visual design concepts. The first project for that class was a sportswear collection. And sportswear, if you don't know what that means, it just means all basic women's clothing. It has nothing to do with sporting. It's just generic casual clothes. So we had to, again, following the theme of designing for a brand with a brand in mind, I decided to design a collection for 7 for All Mankind, a spring-summer collection based upon the work of an earlier designer. So we had to incorporate the work of a 20th century or even 19th century designer into this whole project. Along with that, I have a journal because we were required to keep a design journal before we actually decided on the garments that we would make. So I use this to do my research and also all of my idea development. My inspiration images, my colors, my brand, couple images from the brand. This is Claire McCardle. She's widely credited with being the first women's sportswear designer in the 1950s. And then these are all of my first drafts on tracing paper only. It's a little hard to see. They put you to work in freshman year, I'm telling you. All these first drafts. He put little stars on the ones that he liked. So these are some shapes and details that I had come up with. Again, very inspired by the 50s. And then these were my selection, the first edit. And I also had my fabric swatches at this point. It's a good combination of cotton, different weights of cotton, denim, voile, because it is a spring-summer collection. I'm pretty sure I have some linen in there as well. So again, these are not finished figures. These are just the ones that the professor selected and wanted to see in color. My accessories. From that journal and all of the edits that the professor and I had done together comes this collection. So here's my fabric and mood page and all of my fabrics that are cotton, jersey knit, shirting. Denim is in there, 2 different types of denim. And then here are my first 2 figures. I really like this baby doll dress. I'd love to make it. So this girl's wearing the jacket over the dress. This is an awesome jacket too. Leave a comment if you want me to make this jacket a reality. This fabric took me a really long time to render with marker and pencil, but it paid off. And then here are the flats. I can't remember if I did these on paper. No, I did these on Illustrator because I was sick of doing them on paper. The next one you have to design for an existing luxury designer. So it's a little bit more elevated, a little bit more of an evening focus. Now keep in mind, this is spring 2020. So smack dab in the middle of our semester, COVID happened and sent us all home. So we had to evacuate the dorms, come home, and finish all of these classes online. So this project is a little bit of an amalgamation of in-person work and then online work. So it's less than ideal, but it's fun to look back and see in real time how we adapted as students and professors to the desperate times. The designer I chose to design for was Gianfranco Ferre, so I had to research him. He was an Italian designer in the 20th century. He started out in jewelry. He had some architecture background as well, but I really liked his sort of structural work, and he was predominantly working in the 70s and 80s. So here is that section of the design journal. Here are the first figures. These have some colored pencil. Oh yeah. And this is a fall winter collection, so what you're looking at is all silk and wool. Evening gowns. More evening gowns. This one has a corset built into it. And these fabrics are not ones that I could find in person, unfortunately, because we were sent home. So I'm working based on online swatches. Here's my accessories, hair and makeup. Again, going for kind of an 80s look, but a little bit more minimal, a little bit more Italian. So that's the journal. And here is the project. I focused on the juxtaposition of old and new architecture in New York City. Here are my fabrics, a variety of silk and wool. And then here are my first two figures. Love the pantsuit. Again, leave a comment if you want to see that pantsuit made, because I would make it tomorrow if I had the time. Here are my other figures. Love this coat. Probably I think that's a wool coat. And then this is the evening gown, the more formal dresses in the collection. And here are the flats. Also done on Illustrator because I was fed up with paper. Also in that class, we had to draw live models. So the professor brought models in. We had to draw them from our perspective, live and timed. So here are a few highlights from that. And again, because we went online, he also sent us images because we couldn't finish with the model in person. So we had to just settle on images that he provided. Next class, materials and construction. For this class, we had to make a pair of pants and a jacket, and we could stylize them a little bit more, but they were still the same base pattern. So I did corduroy pants, and they had to have a zipper fly. And then here is the jacket. So the cool thing is, this lace piece I got from a thrifted garment. I thrifted this hideous lace and denim cover-up thing for like $4, and then I cut the lace out of it and applied it to the back of my jacket, and I think it gave a really nice detail. I also put a special trim on the pocket, patch pocket. So that was the first jacket that I ever made, and I had to finish that jacket at home without the professor's actual guidance, but we survived. Draping class. This class tested my limits. The professor, first of all, was pretty tough, but she didn't communicate her expectations clearly, and then when we went online, forget it. Like, it all went out the window. So it was a bit of a rough time, but in retrospect, it was fun. The first thing we had to do was a dolman sleeve, so I grabbed inspiration from my own Geisha collection and used the same fabric. We didn't actually make it, we just draped it in muslin, but there's the pattern. The next project in that class was an asymmetrical skirt. Mine looks like some kind of a bug, I suppose. I really wasn't thrilled about that class, so I didn't work too hard on this assignment. So when we got sent home, the next thing that we had to drape was a cowl neck. So this was my dress. It looks a little bit fishy. I must have been inspired by nature that semester. So the final project for that class was a draping project using all the techniques that we had learned that semester. That was a hard ask because we were all at home. So I just used my foray imagery and colors to be able to drape this project. So I created a long, silky cardigan piece with a skirt. You have to show the patterns. And this was the final product. I'm pretty sure I made the cardigan piece out of a bed sheet. And you might be wondering, what are those ant-like black bits on the dress? I spent hours beating this piece of garbage. I can't remember if it was required or if that was just my interpretation of it. Honestly, I think my brain has blocked it out most of the time. But I sat there and I beaded this draped piece that went into a bag, and I never thought about again, except in my nightmares. Oh joys. Now that we've covered the major area courses, I'll show you a couple of the other things that we did in the life drawing class. This is my hand holding my violin. This was a man that sat for us, and we had to draw it on toned paper using black, white, and gray. And then we had to do a self-portrait. This is the picture of me, but I drew myself in the mirror. Here's the first development, focusing on facial bones and all that jazz. And then this was the final product. I don't really think that it looks like me, but it's a cool drawing nonetheless. I also did one in color, but I can't locate that. Maybe I'll slap it into the video when I'm editing. I'm throwing in a few more projects from this class that weren't as important or were a bit more NSFW. We worked with live models, and if anything, I learned how to appreciate the human body in a better way. Finally, we had to take a fashion history course. Basically, it was learning through journaling. When we got sent home, we were not forced to do physical journals. So he allowed us to use Photoshop and digital media to create the journal. So we went through history. The first journal was based on ancient Sumer. I couldn't find that one, and I don't even think I finished it because it was right during COVID. The next one that I created, though, was based on Queen Elizabeth I. So I had to gather all these images and then show with numbers. Here were my fabrics that I used. Here were my figures, the first drafts, and then the final drafts. I did these in my iPad, and I didn't have a lot of experience with illustration in my iPad, so they look a little rough, but so it's a mini collection based on Good Queen Bess. It's a pretty sweet pattern. I kind of want that now. Then, because we finished at 1900, my final project for that class was based in the 1890s and the cycling boom that happened, particularly among women. And it was when women also started wearing trousers in public, which was somewhat revolutionary. So this is revolutions per minute. These are all of my images. It's very aesthetically pleasing. Like, I'm still pleased with this project, and I think it would be a really, really cute collection. This was the patent for the bicycle skirt, which was really cool because it was bifurcated. So it was basically pants hiding behind a skirt. I think we should bring those back into fashion. And then here are all of my fabrics that I chose. And then here are my sketches. So they could be worn theoretically on the bike, but they don't look like cycling clothes. Ooh, semester 3. Makes me shiver a little bit. So I took a break between 2020 and 2021. I was not about to pay full tuition for online classes where nobody knows what's going on. So I took a gap year, had the time of my life. I was a nanny, I taught music, I taught sewing, I worked for my dad. It was great. Saved up. So I went back to school in fall 2021 to continue my fashion design degree. So we're up to the 3rd level of visual design concepts, 3rd level of draping class, and then instead of materials and construction, we had pattern making, and then we had another digital design class. I took visual design concepts online. These are the projects from that class. So we had to do a market research project comparing various similar brands. So I compared coats, blouses from Fendi, Rick Owens, and Prada, a black jacket blazer, sweaters, skirts, pants, dresses, and then trends that we saw on the runway that season. Then, because this professor was very focused on sustainability and ethical consumption, we had to do a project based on that. So I did one called Reincarnation with a pair of jeans, and this one I actually really enjoyed it, and I still have it here. These were the jeans. They were extra large denim jeans. And then here's my design. It's kind of like a corset vest that ties in the back. Process of cutting. This is the assembly in this very room, actually. I had to do some alterations. It was fitting a little funky. Sewing down the belt loops in the back for the closures. And then here's the final product. So here's the denim upcycle process. Dead stock or used jeans cut from a specially designed pattern and then sold as uniform designs with unique features. Here's another past example of a project that I did. I created a denim jacket for this guy out of 2.5 pairs of giant men's jeans. Here is the vest. I haven't even worn it out, so I couldn't tell you how it really looks on. I kind of dig this like over the sweatshirt look. Maybe I'll wear it to graduation. Also in that class, we had to design a project for our customer that we designed. So mine was the Muse or something like that. So I designed a collection based on prog art rock concept albums of the 70s called Close to the Edge. Inspiration for this project is the role of storytelling in art rock music, from Pink Floyd to Dream Theater. Oh yes, and I also made a Spotify playlist to go along with it, which I can link in the description if you want to listen to it. So I use a combination of the artwork of Roger Dean, who designed all of Yes's album covers, and photos from my family's trips out west. So these are photos of Utah. Me sweating in the Narrows at Zion National Park. This is again sort of a digital journal. These are my initial sketches. Rick Wigman and the guy that plays the flute for Jethro Tull. Peter Gabriel, Renaissance, and then me playing for my brother's band. Check them out. The Inquisition on Spotify. Here are my fabrics. I've got some silks, wool knit, faux suede, denim. It's kind of a fall winter heavy collection. And then here are the garments. So these I rendered on my iPad, and there was definitely an improvement. I got definitely more comfortable with Procreate and with all of the brush settings. This print took forever to render because I had to actually draw it in Procreate and then create the pattern and then impose it into the pants. Here are more figures. And then here are the flats. So again, these flats I rendered on Procreate in my iPad, and I actually drew them with the symmetry feature, and I feel like they are definitely more artful than even in Illustrator. The coat, jeans. That's a lot of pieces. That's a lot of pieces. The final project for that class was another ethical consumption sustainability type of project where we had to come up with a solution and kind of figure out how to drape existing things and create new things. This one is based on the short story of Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. And this collection celebrates inequality, right? Because in Harrison Bergeron, they live in a world where everyone is equalized by the government. So the strong have to wear very heavy weights to be dragged down. I connected that to consumer-driven fashion produces monstrous amounts of waste and debt for the sake of convenience and commonality. Having done away with vibrant cultural garb and sewing as a commonplace skill, the world's population now wears the same mass-produced pieces. Unequality breeds creativity and competition. There's my mood board. And this will come up again because I recycled this for another project the following semester. Another mood board. Keep the Abraham Lincoln quote. And then we had to come up with an oblique strategy. So mine was use an old idea, turning old scraps into new things. So I used my 2 denim examples and then a couple other designers. And then sourcing, you could source for fab scrap and also bulk orders of dead stock items, life cycle, how to care for it. And then here are some shirts. Now this was a project that I did for fun and I incorporated it into my school project. I thrifted 3 men's shirts. I can actually link the YouTube video here. I did this project and I took 3 men's shirts apart and then I put them back together. I called them FRANKENSHIRTS. So that I translate that idea into a couple different sketches here. It's a creepy little avatar too. Where did I get that from? Another thrifted shirt that I draped and redraped. And then jeans and dickies. And then my reincarnation project. Quite honestly, I can't even remember what the deal was with the chains. Digital design. This class was a journey. This professor was super, super, super tough, but he really shaped me up in terms of getting my flats in Illustrator absolutely perfect. So I recycled my Close to the Edge project from the other course, and we had to create our own color board. We had to create a variety of garments in different colorways. So here is a t-shirt, bell-bottom jeans in 3 colorways with special rendering of the fabrics, vest made of wool suiting, and a skirt, and then this dress in 3 colorways. There are the black and white flats. So again, massive improvement from my early Illustrator flats to now, all thanks to this one professor. I mean, I would get single marks off for not putting shadows in the right places or not including this button closure on the cuff. He'd grill me like, where's the button closure? How are you gonna get your hand into that sleeve? Good times. Also in that class, we had to create a tech pack for one of the garments. So I decided to make a tech pack for the jeans, and this is my very first exposure to a proper tech pack. This was very, very difficult at first, but it set me up for success in the Technical Design Bachelors program. Every single construction detail, including the fabric, how the pieces are cut, how the pieces are stitched together, all the nuts and bolts. Detailed sketch of the back pocket. The wash guide. These are all of the trims and notions. So this includes the leather patch to go on the back of the jeans. The shank button, which has my brand on it. When I tell you this professor wanted every single detail and nothing missing. This is the thread guide for exactly which threads go where, what color they are, all that. And then the BOM and colorways. So basically this is just, it's called the BOM or Bill of Materials. So it's explaining what type of fabric you're using for what parts. So I have my main body fabric, which is a denim, and I have that in 3 colorways, deep indigo, russet, and pewter. And then I have my pocketing, which is just a natural cotton color. And then the rest of the materials include the metal zipper, the alloy shank button, alloy rivets, thread, all the different types of thread, the main label, the size label, the care label, and the waistband patch. So these are all of the pieces that go into creating every garment that's mass produced that you see on your shelves and on the rack of every single store. This is the stitching guide, all the top stitching that's on the jeans, exactly how many stitches per inch, the thread type, and the locations. And then these are the sample specs. So these are all of the measurements that will make the garment fit on a body. So you have waist, hip, thigh, knee, leg opening, inseam, waistband height, front rise, back rise, everything that you could imagine. These are graded specs. So this is the standard size, would be 29-inch waist. And then this is what it would be based on the formulas, graded up and then graded down. So next up we have the pattern making class, which was a lot of fun. We learned a lot about special forms of pattern making, how to pattern make with curves, asymmetrical, how to pattern make a raglan sleeve, a drop shoulder sleeve, a princess. It was quite intense. These were some of the highlights of that class. So the first one is this wavy dress that I did. It took quite a while, but I was able to sew it together. And I actually have it right here. Here's the clown dress in all its glory. The final for that class was we had to create a couple different garments, pattern making from paper and also draping it in muslin. So this was my original sketch. These are the pattern pieces. So it's a split jacket with this dropped shoulder and a collar. And then I had a special pocket bag. These are the pants. They're slightly flared, but they're a little bit more simple. And then here is the half muslin of the jacket. So it has a very unique sleeve that has this piece that folds over. This is the sleeve, and it's got this overlapping piece. And it took a little while to drape and to get it to hang right. I think it turned out pretty cool, and I still have the pattern for this. Here's the funky hanging pocket. So it's sort of detached from the rest of the body of the jacket, kind of acting as a patch pocket, and it's also lined. These are the pants. I don't have a leg mannequin at home, so I had to use my own. And then the cutter's must. The cutter's must is basically a list of the pattern pieces and how many of them you cut. It's kind of like a pre-tech pack. Finally, we have this draping class. I loved this draping class. The professor was amazing and wonderful and beautiful, and I wish that I had her for the rest of my college career. She really taught us how jackets work, especially how women's jackets work, and how to make a jacket that sells. So I had a blast in her class, and here are just a couple examples of what we made. This one was a dress that I designed. It's kind of like a dress slash jacket. Got this raglan sleeve, 2 princess darts, and then this sloping curve line that ends in a pocket. Pretty sure I still have the muslin and the pattern for it. This one looks like a lampshade. It's a jacket. So yeah, that was practicing the shawl collar. Slay. It's also got lining on the inside because she required lining. Basically just has one fish eye dart here so that the collar can drape over the neckline nicely. The lampshade jacket. So the final for this class was quite an endeavor. She put us into groups of 4, and the 4 of us had to choose a celebrity and a theme and an event. So our group chose to design for Anya Taylor-Joy, the actress, going to a movie premiere for a girly horror movie that she is starring in. Main inspiration was these older horror movies like Psycho and the early Dracula movie, also The Queen's Gambit, which had just recently come out. So we have a pretty rich palette of colors and vibes to work with here. My outfit is basically one of a collection of 4 with my 3 other teammates. This was my cutter's must with all of the pattern pieces listed, self A, self B lining fusible. These are my pattern pieces. We had to do it in oak tag because it was more of a formal pattern. More pattern pieces, the back and the sleeve. Yet more pattern pieces. I believe this is the lining. And this is the final product. I'm really happy with this project, and I've actually adapted the jacket pattern into other variations. I have the jacket with me right here. See that bright red lining? It's super cute. I love the duality, the clashing but complementary fabrics. It's also got the secret pocket right here. It's very 80s. There I'm demonstrating the pocket, the sleeve detail, and the back vent. Here it is inside out. She wanted to see that. Oh yeah, and then here's the first draft. So the cool thing about draping is that you see many different iterations of it, and I really enjoyed watching this one develop from just a muslin to this amazing tweed piece. A fantastic end to my 3rd semester. Here we are, final semester of the Fashion Design AAS degree. We've made it this far, and now we're at the 4th and final level of visual design concepts. For visual design concepts, when I discovered that I could have the same professor that I had for pre-college, 1st semester and 2nd semester, that he was teaching the 4th semester class, I took his class immediately. Was so glad I got in because he already knew me, and it made for a great finishing projects for my associate's degree. I will only show you 2 final projects and the journals that go with each of them. My first project was called Unequality, so I recycled the whole Harrison Bergeron concept with the ballerinas and the inequality, adapted that into this class, which made for very easy journaling. My mood boards, as you saw before. You should read the story, by the way. Read Harrison Bergeron. It's kooky, but it's good. The thesis statement. Here are the first sketches for the garments. And again, fabrics are inside the projects that you'll see. This is a fall-winter collection, so it's very serious, and suits, jackets, pants. I guess I worked the chains into the whole design in the end. And then I worked some of the ballerina aesthetic into it. And then here's some final dresses. one of the first edits, more of the professor's edits. Compared to even the previous semester, the previous year, my journals got much more detailed. Start to think a little bit more critically about how you're designing things, and it's really delightful to see that development, honestly. This is like a blouse with overalls, overall dress, I guess it is. And then silk dresses. This silk is so cool, and I wish I could find it again, this printed silk. Okay, and that's that for that journal. Now to the project. Very narrative, surveillance state, Soviet architecture. I created this image from, because it's in the story, his parents are watching ballet on TV, and then he goes on and sort of wrecks the ballet. Here are my fabrics. Lots of silk. I used some spandex. There's tech nylon for the puffers, stretch pleather, wool suiting. I just really like how all of these look together, and all of it with the gunmetal and clasps and closures and buttons and all that good stuff. And then here are the final renderings that I did on my iPad. Silk dress, wool suit, and the 2 ballet dresses. These are gorgeous. I would love to have both. The flats. Pretty sure I did these flats in my iPad as well. So that's the fall winter collection. So again, we had to do spring summer collection as well. Here's the journal. This one I believe is called Center of the World, and it's based upon the diversity of New York City. I used a lot of images of immigrants in my mood board, all the different people, the different colors, different cultures. Here are the first drafts. These are some dresses. There's so much more interesting in color, honestly. I think my silhouettes have been very tailored, but in this project I wanted to expand a little bit more into more draped feminine types of garments. These are all in cotton. And then here are all the shreds of swatches for the patchwork jeans and the jacket to go with it. Slinky jersey dress. I uploaded the sketches from pictures to my iPad, and then I colored them in on my iPad. So I used Procreate to actually color them because it was easier than using markers. Blouse and pant. And then here's some dresses. Another knit dress. It's just a denim jacket with a knit dress. This is a cotton ripstop, and it's kind of like a long vest that has a tie belt closure. That's the journal, and here's the project. Great images throughout history. Here are the fabrics. I'm pretty sure I sourced most of these fabrics from B&J, which is a specialty fabric store in the city that imports fabrics from all around the world. Being in New York City, I wanted to include cottons from India, Austria, Japan, and then here is the final product. Lots of pattern mixing, but I think it works out nicely. The footwear was fun too, the little mules and sandals. This ikat blouse was fun to render too. So that's Visual Design Concepts 4, and that is the final fashion illustration class that I will ever take in my college career because I went on to technical design instead of fashion design. Now, in the digital design class, we were learning more about tech packs, learning how they work. We started using Gerber's unique PLM system, which means product line management. So it's a system used by fashion companies to track all of the stages of production for one product, and that includes everything from bill of materials to specs to fitting comments, all the information you could ever want. So we focused on that. Hi, baby. Hi to the camera. I know you're mad at me. I'm sorry. Good girl. She hates that. For the final project for that class, we had to be paired up with someone else, create a brand and create a line, but we also had to create basic BOMs and tech packs for those in different colorways. So improving upon the knowledge of the previous semester. So I was paired up with this other girl, and we had our customer profile, late 20s, female, single. I mean, the most typical urbanite customer profile that you could think of in fashion school. Our brand identity, Jean and Jane, because my middle name's Jean and her middle name was Jane. This was our inspiration. Old World, downtown Chelsea, West Village, New York. This is our woman. I don't know why we have so many pantsuits. These are our colors that we came up with. And then these are our flats. Again, these are a combination of styles. Some of these are hers and some of these are mine. That might have all been her, and then this was all me. Okay, so I did this corset and shorts, dress, jacket, and then some of them we displayed in colors, and this one I also displayed on a figure. And then this is the tech pack for the jacket, for one garment. Bill of materials, so a slightly different format from the other one because the other one was in Excel, but it's basically the same information. This is the seasonal colorway, so it comes in white and yellow. And then these are all the colorways for all the materials. These are detailed images with callouts. These are called callouts when we're pointing out, this is what this size this button is, this is what type of stitching this is blah, 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 blah. And then here's a tech pack for the pants. All the same info. And we had to do a line chart. So a line chart is what is displayed, the collection that's displayed to salesmen and also for designers reference. So this is a line chart with the style numbers, the descriptions, fabrication, size, and price as well. So it's all of this information of each style. Every brand has this for every season. The draping class. So for the associates graduates from fashion design, every year they do an associates exhibition. So the exhibition always has a theme every year, and every person in the associates fashion design program has to follow the theme, and all of those who are chosen get to have their garments displayed in the Fine Arts Center. Mine did not get chosen, alas, but I still had fun making mine. Can you guess what the theme for ours was? Just take a guess. Empire State of Mind. So I decided to play more with the theme of New York City being the center for immigrants. And this is a suit. It's a denim jacket and pants set, and the most fun part about this process was learning how to use the Cricut machine. So I bought this sort of soft velvet finish vinyl, and then I translated New York into all these different languages, and then I organized them all onto a document, and then I put it through the Cricut machine to have it cut out all of the vinyl. Then I cut all the phrases out, and I heat set the vinyl phrases onto the fabric after I had made the garment. So that's what creates this this effect of all of the words piling on top of each other, and it was really cool. And then I used antique nickel snaps. I used a white denim. It was a lot of top stitching. So I had a lot of fun with this. It's kind of a little bit more minimal. You know, it's not like a dress with a taxi on the front of it or something. And I actually have it right here. I haven't worn the jacket out yet, but here it is up close. So you can see that the vinyl is somewhat textured. Pockets are functional. After that, we had a series of very random assignments. I think after the Associates exhibition, they have to keep everybody busy. So they literally gave us busy work. This professor had us make a dress out of stiff Pellon interfacing. So interfacing not inside the dress, but the dress itself is made of interfacing. This is what I did. I cut out the pattern piece, I draped it, I cut out the pattern pieces, I sliced it, and then stitched it, folding it over. So it created like these really cool gills effects. Honestly, I was making it up as I went, and I painted it, and I had a lot of fun with it, but it was very strange. It's like a cursed mermaid dress, and it's unwearable too because it's made of Pellon. So what are you gonna do, rip it off? I can't get rid of it because It's beautiful in a very strange way. See how crunchy this is? Maybe I can get someone to wear this to the Met Gala. Maybe I can wear this to the Met Gala. Oh, and how could I forget? How could I forget? I can't even describe. He didn't want us to cut anything, but learning how to drape squares into something creative. So this is what I came up with. Rolling out of bed with the sheets twisted up around you. Yeah. At around the same time, I was commuting, so I would get to school early in the morning because that was the only time that the train came in, and I preferred to be at school early anyway, so this was one early morning. I was bored, so I decided to take all of the uns out of the words that are blazoned around the student center. So instead of saying unexpected, it's expected. And it's predictable, and it's stoppable, and it's beatable. Take that to mean whatever you wish. Before we begin on the second half of my experience at FIT, I just want to explain exactly what technical design is. If you've never heard of it, the technical designer is basically the engineer of the garment. The technical designer is the person that evaluates all of the measurements, evaluates the pattern, evaluates the production standards to make sure that all of the quality is correct, to make sure that the garment fits. Every garment goes through multiple stages of sample development, so the first sample ever made usually doesn't fit a model very well. So the technical designer is the person that says, change this, change that, put this seam there, increase the shoulder, whatever, so that the next fit sample can be better than the last one, and so on and so forth, for the pre-production sample to the top of production sample, so that when these mass-produced goods that are often thousands of units don't fit badly, because when something fits badly, you lose money. I was first exposed to it at FIT. I didn't know what it was, but I went to the info session and it really piqued my interest because I'm fascinated by how things fit together, how things work. And that was my favorite part of the whole fashion design associate's degree. I applied for the Bachelor of Science in Technical Design and I got in. This program is much, much smaller at FIT, and that's why many people don't apply for it, because they're not really sure what to expect, or they're just not really into the whole technical thing, which is completely valid. But part of the reason that I made this video is to help people who are investigating technical design find out exactly what is involved in the process, and also as a personal journal of my experience, a personal chronicle of my 4 years at FIT. Our technical design program had about 40 people starting out. We had people who were from fashion design and menswear, associates level at FIT, who just reapplied and got in. But we also had a couple fashion business management majors. And what was interesting about that was that they had to take bridge courses to learn pattern making, to learn Illustrator, to learn all of those skills that I learned in the design major. So I really give the FBM people extra credit because they had to work extra hard to learn stuff that I had the benefit of learning through the associates, through the design program. We also had some people from other colleges, community colleges. Overall, I've had a wonderful experience. Shout out to all my tech design colleagues. You guys have been great. It felt like a family because we were such a small cohort. And yeah, I'm finished with my capstone and I've turned in all my assignments, so here I am reviewing all my assignments again for you. Because I know that I'm not going to do this any time later, and this is going to be a lot of editing. So when we get into technical design, there is a certain set of major area courses that either get repeated or build upon one another. And primarily those at the beginning are production pattern making and digital pattern making. So everything that I have learned from the more creative pattern making classes in the past, I carry into production pattern making, which focuses more on creating the perfect blocks or the perfect slopers to be able to produce production patterns for many standard styles. So you will notice that there is less of a variety of creative visual projects involved in each semester and each set of classwork. However, I do have a whole lot of notes, and that's because in the technical design degree, you're much more focused on the details of different types of garments, or you're focused on the details of grand projects more so than a lot of little creative facets and visual facets to projects. You're working a lot more with numbers, with measurements, with spreadsheets. So I won't show you as many visuals in this, but I will run through some of my notes and show you what I've kind of learned in each class. In this class, we learned how to measure the dress form, all the points of measurement to create slopers. Yeah, here we go. Here, dress measurements. I did these on my iPad. And then this was the guide to drafting a basic Ann Taylor style collared shirt. So every single person created an Ann Taylor shirt for a specific size. So this was the drafting instructions for that. This class was very lecture heavy. The professor was really tough, but she was fantastic and really shaped us up and helped us understand pattern making. So this is how to draft a shirt from torso sloper with darts. Basically, you have these things called slopers, and it's essentially a very basic body block with a waist, with a bust measurement, with an armhole, with a bust dart, and with a middle dart. And this is the center back or the center front. So I have two for front and back. And from these, I was able to derive many different types of blouses and shirts. So we learned how to make this from our dress form measurements, but also how to draft the blouse off of this. This blouse is created from those blocks, and you're changing the shoulder position, you're changing the darts, you're adding to the front to create a fold over placket. All of these tiny little details. So you really have to have an extra coffee in the morning so that you're ready to listen. A lot of this class is creating a whole bunch of slopers. So from that first sloper, we created a bodice. So this is a bodice that ends at the waist, and it has this huge dart up to the bust. That's the front. And this is the back. So this is helpful for when you're drafting more fitted dresses. Drafted a sleeve. We made dartless slopers, which means they're not quite as fitted, and you make more kind of blocky stuff that doesn't have bust darts and this sort of thing. We also did a dartless sleeve in this class. We did a skirt, which was the most basic. We did skirt front and back. She's gonna put you to work, because in order to make these, before you even cut slopers out of oak tag, you have to draft them on paper. So I've kept all of my first drafts, and this is what she reviews and corrects, and then you trace this onto oak tag. So again, everything just progresses from listen to her lecture and follow the handouts, take your measurements, be very careful, double check all of your work, and you just go from paper to oak tag. And that was just 1 or 2 semesters. I felt like it was just constant. And they give you lockers, though. We have specific lockers, so that's one good thing. These were instructions to draft a dartless shirt. And then these were measurements for the final project. So for the final project in this specific class, after we had drafted the Ann Taylor shirt, after we had drafted a dartless shirt, we had to take a sample that she would give us from the closet and copy it using our slopers, figuring out exactly which slopers we had to use to copy exactly the style that she gave us. So she gave me a style, and basically I took measurements of everything. Back length from high point shoulder, back length of center back, back neck drop, front length, every single possible measurement that you can imagine. I took it so that I could modify my slopers based on this. So my final product was this blouse. Yeah, it was just this basic kind of dartless blouse. One size fits all. It has this Y-shaped placket, partial placket down the front. It has a neck band, but no collar, right? So it doesn't have a standing up collar. It has 3/4 sleeves that tie, and it also has a back yoke and a bust dart. Again, these are all details that you have to account for, and every move that you make is gonna affect the balance of something else. So a lot of this class is just learning the logic of that and learning how to make sense of it visually, spatially. What's cool is that the classes in technical design are a little bit more integrated than the ones in fashion design. So when we were taking production pattern making, we drafted a blouse based on a style by Ann Taylor. And with that pattern, we had to create a shirt and actually create a blouse for another class called Manufacturing Process Analysis. And in that class, we learned all about machines and fabrication. So what machines do you use for what functions, and what order do you sew something together? So a little bit more of the industrial engineering side of and production side of garment manufacturing. That class was fascinating. I absolutely loved the professor. She was amazing. She was the daughter of a factory owner. She had so much knowledge, and she made the class very enjoyable. This is one thing about SUNY. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent, but this is one thing about SUNY that drove me up the wall. SUNY requires you to take a certain amount of gen eds, and within the gen eds requirement, FIT basically turns it into you have to take a bunch of fashion and art history classes, which is great and which is beneficial, but I felt like I took more fashion history classes than I needed to, and if I had the option, I would have replaced them with production, manufacturing, much more practical hard skill classes to fill up those credits. But because it's not a private institution, they themselves were not even allowed, their hands were tied basically. So even though I pled with the department, they couldn't let me. So this one class was my only exposure to manufacturing classes in the technical design program, even though I wish, my dream would be if they could integrate the two programs a lot more, where you're actually working hand in hand with production majors, or you're taking more production classes in general. The other thing was that the production classes at our school were amazing because they had special machines in there, and they have 2 production rooms, and those 2 were a dramatic reduction from what they were before, because apparently the production department used to have the entire 4th floor of the design building. Imagine how much the value of the factory has been taken away from fashion education, because everything is business now, right? Everything is marketing and advertising and social media and blah, blah, blah. The issue is that clothes still need to be made. This is the dead horse that I will beat, because I'm very passionate about manufacturing. And so if I could improve the technical design program in one way, would be to replace all of the gen eds with manufacturing classes. But that's just me. So anyway, in the manufacturing process analysis class, we learned all about where sewing standards come from. We learned about lock stitch versus chain stitch, flatbed, raised bed, cylinder, post pedestal, feed off the arm. It was pretty intense though, because we had to memorize all these parts of the machines and describe them on an exam. Material feeding types, so we went into even how the type of presser foot and feed dogs in the machine and the throat plate will change the pressure and how the fabric moves through the machine. And this is super nerdy, but my mom got me a Speedy Lock machine that was used, a beautiful overlock machine, and this one has what's called a differential feed function. So the front and back feed dogs have you can adjust them to feed the fabric in at a different speed and different pressure. So when you're working with stretch fabrics, for example, you want the feed dogs to push it ahead so that it doesn't end up stretched out or bunched up. So that's what differential feed helps with. And also you can adjust the height of it depending on the thickness of the fabric. Compound feed, unison feed. I haven't looked at these notes. I haven't looked at these notes since last year, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this class. So we had to study all of this in order to answer questions on a written exam. And then we had stitch classes. By the way, this is a handout heavy major, so you're gonna get paper handouts, you're gonna get email handouts. Save everything. It's such important information. At the end of your first semester in tech design, you'll come out with practically textbooks on everything that you learned, that you acquired throughout the semester. This is the written exam that I had to take. She was really old-fashioned. It was with pencils and everything. Oh yeah, general stitch and seam terminology. So stitching is the action that the machine does, but the seam is the way that the fabric is stitched together. So there's all these different seam types for all different garments. And if you just look on a pair of jeans or a shirt or anything, you will see several different types of seaming. So that's all of the seam types. And then there are 7 basic classes of stitches. So different machines perform different types of stitches. And these were all originally classified for use by the military and for use by manufacturers who were making military uniforms, because everything obviously had to be uniform. This is the first time when you have the ASTM standards. The American Society for Testing of Materials adapted this guide of classifications of stitches. So all of these machines do different types of stitches. The 300 class is the most standard. It has a needle and bobbin, and that's what the standard lock stitch machine is behind me. So that has thread coming from two different places to lock together. 500 class is overlocks, and that makes a clean finishing on the inside of every garment. So again, you'll get all of this in this class. It's very, very detailed, but it's fascinating and very, very helpful for when you want to understand what holds a garment together. One of the technicians does these machine demos, and he shows all of the different machines that are inside of the production room. So they've got button sewers, buttonhole makers, they've got cover stitches, they've got leather machines. It's a cool class. You would really enjoy it because it's so visual and it's so hands-on. Yeah, we had to make a threading guide for a serger or an overlock machine, a 3-thread overlock. This was another one. We had to analyze 2 different types of knit bottoms. I don't know if she changes it depending on the year, but this is what it was for us. So first I analyzed a pair of sporty sweatpants that I have, and I identified all the different types of stitching that are found on it and the details. Again, call-outs. Call-outs are always coming back, right? And then I identified the pattern pieces, how many to cut, other pieces like the rib waistband, and then trimmings and labels. And then this is one thing that we learned in this class that I would have liked to learn more about, was operations. While they were putting these sweatpants together, what was the order of operations and how would it have gone down the assembly line? So you start with ironing the patch onto the front piece. You join pocket lining to pocket and serge. You join pocket lining to the front pocket mouth, right? So it's a little hard to, as I'm describing it, it's a little bit hard maybe to visualize. You're imagining, let's imagine a tree, and it forms a flow chart of you've got your fronts, your backs, yokes, waistbands, pockets, all of these things. How do these pieces come together and in what order to produce one pair of sweatpants? So that's basically what the operations list is, and you'll do a bunch of this throughout the class. This is the other more simpler bottom. I wanted to keep it simple. With the other one was so complicated that I just did this pajama bottom, and look at the operations list, 7 steps versus 22 for the other one. Yes, and then we had to draw parts of a machine, and this one I believe was the overlock machine. The more that I look at it, the more I realize that this was a pretty intense class. The final project for the manufacturing process analysis class is to build the Ann Taylor shirt that we pattern made in production pattern making class. So with the paper pattern that we drafted, we have to cut it out and create the shirt, but also create a manufacturing report to go along with it. So this is what a manufacturing report looks like, and this is the final project for manufacturing process analysis class. So this is the shirt summary. It's basically a cutter's must, which we learned about last degree with the information about all the pattern pieces, yardages, construction comments, trimmings, and the sketch. These are the construction specifications. So how much seam allowance do you leave for each object that you're stitching? What is the top stitch requirement? And then the specification with words and directions. These are the fabrics and trims. It's kind of like a bill of materials. So we have the fabric swatch. Again, this is the format that she gives us to make on paper, and then we have to recreate it in a spreadsheet. And so this includes my threads, my buttons, my interfacing, and then labels as well. Here are my callouts, so all the info about the stitching on a visual. And here is the assembly chart. So the assembly chart is the thing that kept me up all night in the computer lab. So when we're sewing the shirt together, we have to almost keep a journal of how we're sewing it together, what pieces we're putting where, because there are different ways that you can assemble a shirt. It's just that you have to make sure that it's logical, right? And you even record your mishaps and whatever happens. And from that journal, you're going to create this assembly chart, which includes the operation name, the stitch type, if that's applicable, stitches per inch, seam allowance, the seam classification, so the type of seam that it is, the seam sketch, which you can find online, the machine attachment, if you're using like a special type of top stitch foot or a ruler, and then other machines. So you include your fusing, you include your pressing, you include every single operation that you do to create the shirt. So this is the kind of thing that would go to a factory for an assembly line. So for this shirt, there were 51 operations that I recorded. And then finally a wish list of potential machine attachments or tools that could have been helpful that we didn't have access to. This is the tree and flow chart that I described earlier on. So this visual helps make sense of the assembly chart or the operation list. So you have all the pieces up here along the top, and then the process by which they get joined together. You come all the way down to finishing the hem, pressing and hanging, and you have your final product. And final quality comments, which is anything else that we might have recorded in the journal. So that's manufacturing process analysis. If you couldn't tell, I love the class and wish I could have taken more. Finally, I want to talk about all of the digital pattern making classes. So in the technical design program, you will learn 2 programs. You will learn Gerber AccuMark pattern design. You will also learn Browser V-Stitcher. So the first program they start you on is called Gerber AccuMark. In this program, this is the textbook for that. This is the collection of handouts that we received to learn this program. So basically, as you're learning paper pattern making, you're also learning digital pattern making because this is now industry standard. Basically, it just has all the instructions on how to do all of the tools, and you do various exercises for each of these tools. You have piece creation, piece modification, darts, points, pleats, fullness. All of the things that you would do in real life are simulated by the computer. And then finally that class finishes with, she gives you a sketch of a blouse, and similar to the production pattern making class, you have to create the pattern for this blouse in the computer program, in the Gerber AccuMark program. So I'd like to show you what I did for mine. So this was the blouse that she gave to me. It's got ruffles. Here's the cutter's must, pattern names, pieces, trimmings, the works. And then we had to create drafts, and drafts are basically the very first lines and the things that you're adding to the sloper to start creating the shape. So you could see I'm drafting from a bodice sloper and then a skirt sloper. And then these are the pieces. So you end up tracing out all of these pieces from your drafts, including measurements. It looks daunting, but really once you learn the system and you learn how to talk to the computer, it's pretty intuitive. Back draft, back pieces, back skirt piece. Here's the sleeve draft, the sleeve pieces. And then here are all of the self patterns for that specific blouse. So all of the skills that you learn in this class during this semester, you apply to your final project, which is a single blouse. So once you're finished with the foundational groundwork given to you in the first semester of technical design or fifth semester at FIT, you move on to sixth semester, and all of those classes are practically building on top of what you've already learned. So in the production pattern making class, you move on to pattern make for knit fabrics because that takes a different technique. And then in the computerized pattern making class, you learn how to do grading, which I'll explain in a moment. I will only show you a few pieces from the knits and stretch class. We had to learn how to make t-shirts, we had to make pant blocks for ourselves. We also had to pattern make this knit asymmetrical dress, which I thought was pretty. It was complicated, but it was pretty. So you'll see you have to put pleats in the side here. Funny story, we all had to make pant blocks for our own bodies from the same method, but for some reason all of our pants turned out with like 15-inch crotch rises for some reason, and so the pants were up to here. I'm pretty sure I can find them. Behold the sweatpants. They're really not that bad. They fit nicely on the legs, they stretch well, the length is perfect until this is my rib cage.
Huh?
For some reason, all of us ended up with these long crotch hammer pants, and I don't know what was wrong with the method, but it was really funny when it happened. So with a different pants pattern, we also had to make a pair of stretch slacks. I did not do mine in a knit fabric, but I actually used a stretch woven, which I believe was required. Here are the pictures, detailed shots. What is going on with that sock and shoe combo? My goodness. Inside details. And the final project for that class was to create a first draft of a creative pant that we had to design ourselves. So I call these the Vienna sausage pants because the color is difficult to pull off, to say the least. But the design is cool. I wanted to do 2 zippers in the front that are actually functional. So let me take a moment to explain the computerized grading and pattern making class. So once you've learned how to do pattern making in Gerber AccuMark, you go back to paper, the drafting board, to learn how to do grading by hand. Now, grading is the process by which you take one block or one pattern piece and you use a ruler to create the incremental sizing out and in order to create your size range. So let's say your base size is a 6, a women's 6. You would grade down to a 0 and up to however high you want it to go. Typically it ends at 16 or 18 and then plus sizes after that. And for that, you use this nifty little tool called a grading ruler that you place at the edge of the table, and then you'd shift your block back and forth. So once you've learned the principles of grading on paper, you take those skills and you learn how to apply them to Gerber AccuMark, how to talk to the computer to tell it what you want. First, you figure out the body grade. So if you're grading one size would be increasing 1 inch at all the circumferences. So you figure that out and how you split it between two sides of a pattern. Then you create what's called a rule table. So you would apply all of these to every point that grades on the pattern piece. And this is basically a complete list of all of the increments. So once you apply this to the pattern piece, the computer draws the lines for you. You just have to manually punch in exactly the increments that you want. And as the computer visualizes it, it will become clear. So the blouse that I had to pattern make in the last semester's class and just create the pattern, we now have to grade it between a size range of, I think it was 0 to 16 or something like that. So this is that final project for the grading class. Here's the cutter's must, which has, again, all the lists of the patterns, markers, remarks, trimmings. And then here are the graded pattern pieces. So each color signifies a different size. These are all the back pieces with the ruffle, the sleeve, the button markers, which don't grade. I forgot to mention, then you learn how to create a model, which basically is like a cutter's must with anything that a person might need to know, or a cutting machine. Because in factories, they lay out a long roll of all the pattern pieces on a big stack of fabric, and then the cutter goes in with a table saw, like a jigsaw, or there is an automatic cutting machine that goes and traces all the lines. So this is the information needed for that. So finally, in the 6th semester, you will have your first what's called a technical design class. And this is where you learn how to create tech packs, how to do fittings, how to do the actual job of a technical designer. Because the other classes focus on pattern making, computer, grading, and all of the skills that are required around technical design, but this is actually the part where you learn how to create tech packs and do fittings. We only focus on woven fabrics for this class. So before we showed up that semester, we had to create a 2 or 3 piece woven set out of simplicity patterns, because the goal was for us to fit commercial patterns to our own bodies or to our classmates. Because obviously commercial patterns are just standardized and usually they don't fit well anyway. So I'm just going to show you the tech pack and the process of creating the tech pack for all of those. I'm going to begin with the most basic garment, which should be a button-down woven shirt. This first email would be an email or a note that we would send to the factory with all of the fitting notes. I should mention, at this point, all of our tech packs are made in Gerber Unique PLM system. PLM means product line management, and it's a faster workflow than Excel because all the people that are in the project can change it. So all of these tech packs are made in the Gerber PLM system. This is all of the design details. So includes the stitching, specific measurements that are not in the spec sheet, anything that visually needs to be pointed out, like prior projects. Close-up of the sleeve. And then these are the actual sample photos. So I created this whole ensemble in muslin first because I didn't want to waste fabric. This was my actual fabric, a cotton shirting. I used metal buttons and then cotton thread. This is the spec sheet, so this includes all of the POMs, or points of measurement. And so there's usually a standard set of points of measurement that you use for every single garment, like a bust, waist, hip, front length, back length, sleeve length from the center back, next, standard things like that, front neck drop, back neck drop. But from there, depending on the design of the garment, you can add points of measurement that make sense and that would be necessary for a factory to know. So this one's just a pretty standard shirt, except that because it has raglan seams, I had to put in raglan POMs. All the numbers in this column down here are the actual measurements of the muslin. This is the graded spec, which it's what that spec would be in each size, because obviously the measurements will change. Each of these numbers, these columns, are sizes: 2, 4, 6, 8, and my base size was 10, and then upwards, because the measurements will change, as we learned in computerized grading. These are the photo comments. This is super important, and you have to make sure that these are extremely accurate. You have to follow exactly what the professor says, because in a real job setting, every company does it a different way, but they figured out the way to best communicate with their factory. And a lot of what technical design comes down to is effective communication. Because if you make a mistake, the factory is not going to point it out for you. You are the one managing the factory. So all of these notes and the arrows and the lines have to be extremely accurate as possible. So I did all of this in Illustrator. Right, so you can see the seam, the actual seam is here, but I want the seam to be bumped a half an inch towards the front. Back neck drop too high, cross back and waist too wide. And the way that we did the class, we got paired off and we fit each other's garments. So I put this on, I stood up in front of the class, and the professor helped my classmate fit the garment on me and take notes. And then I fitted my classmate's garments. So ultimately, I'm doing the pattern adjustments and I'm making these corrections, but my classmate was the one practicing the live fitting. And then these are revised specs. So obviously, when you make a fitting, you're gonna pin it in here, you're gonna let out there. There's just a lot of critical thinking to this that you'll get the hang of as you keep going. They're the graded revised specs, or updated specs. And then these are the pattern corrections. Some companies will do the technical designer will do pattern corrections, or the factory will do it, but in your classes you have to know how to do pattern corrections. Okay, so that was the first fitting. And then the first fit is your midterm, and then the second fit is your final. So after I modified my shirt pattern, I cut it out of the real fabric to make the second fit. And then I followed exactly the same process for fitting and tech pack creation. I just copied the tech pack and then put in new sample photos and new comments for the second fitting. Again, same measurement callouts. And then this is the official sample in the real fabric. It already fits better, just needed some more help, and you can see the pins in the back here. Okay, and then these are the measurements for the second sample. Graded measurements. These are the comments, and then these are the fit comments. You'll see it's not as many. It's only a few at this point. Revised specs and pattern corrections once again. So that's it. You don't do a third fitting, you only do 2, but you do it on 3 garments. And so that was the shirt. I'm just gonna scurry through the jacket real quick. So I created a linen jacket to go over the shirt. The details, more details of pocket placement. Because there's the muslin, using linen, buttons, thread, specs, graded specs, comments, and then fit comments. Sometimes it was sewing. Sometimes the issue wasn't even measurements. Sometimes it was simply construction and sewing, and that comes up a lot. Okay, revised specs, graded specs, and pattern corrections. Okay. Second fit was a lot better, and I actually did it in the linen fabric. There it is. Comments, and then photo comments. Graded specs and pattern corrections. My skirt was fine. I chose a pretty easy bottom piece, which I would definitely recommend if you're doing 3 pieces. Make one of those extremely simple, because it's a lot of work to put together these tech packs. Here's that. There's the details. There's the muslin. The actual fabric that I used, which I really like. Okay. No fit issues found. Approved for PPS sample, which means pre-production, or PPS would be pre-production sample. And then finally, I had to make a second fit anyway, so I said the pre-production sample has been approved, no fit issues, proceed to TOP sample, which means top of production sample, which would be the final sample of what would actually go into the stores with tags and everything on it. There's my fabric. And then there's the actual sample. I still wear this skirt. I love it so much for all seasons. Specs. And that's it. So once you get to your 7th semester, which is the fall semester of the final year, the senior year, the amount of classes becomes very slim, but the amount of work increases. So in 7th semester, you do the 2nd level technical design class, which focuses on knits and stretch. So just like you did pattern making for wovens and pattern making for knits, you do tech design for wovens and tech design for knits. And for the computer class, you're no longer working on Gerber AccuMark, but they actually teach you Browseware V-Stitcher, which is a 3D rendering software where you take the pattern and you stitch it onto an avatar. So it gives you a rendering, an appearance of what the garment will look like in real life. Obviously it's not perfect, but I think it's a very helpful software, and I loved the professor, and she was so good at teaching. She actually made us all do the certificate and take extra time to go through the videos, take the quizzes, so that we could be certified for V-Stitcher 101. But let's begin with technical design. So remember the Vienna sausage pants that I had to make for the pattern making class? Those came back to haunt me. We had to do a fitting of those pants and create a tech pack for those. I won't bore you with the details, but after that, we had to create a second fit of those pants. So this is the tech pack for the stretch flare jeans in the proper fabric. There's my sketch, the call outs. I put yoke measurements on here because those are not going to change quite as much, and jeans have a lot of little measurements like this. I also had to create an inside view of the front opening with the pockets. Then these are the sample photos. I think it looks a little better in the dark denim, I'm just gonna say. My fabric, my zipper, pocketing, specs, graded specs, comments. These are my photo comments, revised specs, pattern corrections. To raise the front rise and reshape. The rise is a big issue. The crotch rise, yoke pieces. After that, we had to create a knit set. So again, it could be a 2 or 3 piece set. I decided to use a dress and a jacket. Now, the dress is important because it was partly my inspiration for my thesis project. So this is the first fitting of the knit dress with the comments. This is the cover page. I think this was a Simplicity pattern or a McCall's pattern or something like that. I use a cotton French terry. These are the sample photos. I actually still have this sample. It doesn't fit perfectly, but it's still really cute, and I didn't have to cut into it. Here are the specs. Graded specs. And commonly in knit, you don't do a numeric system, but you actually do alpha, which is using letters. So instead of going from 0 to 16, you only really need extra small to extra large, because again, knits stretch, so they can conform, one size can conform to different bodies pretty easily. Here are the comments. Photo comments. Had issues with this hiking waistline. Revised specs. And pattern corrections. I like my pattern corrections here better. I feel like they're more clear. There's the back. There's the sleeve. And then those are the long ties. Here's the second fitting, which I did in this beautiful knit purple fabric. Love this dress for the winter time. Specs, graded specs, revised specs, did them out of order. Comments. This was still hiking, so it was still an issue. We had to drop that. Sleeve cap is always a big issue. Pattern corrections once again. With that dress, I created a jacket to go with it, and I actually pattern made the jacket. So there are the comments in the email. There's the sketch. So it's got drawstrings in the sleeve and in a back channel, which makes it adjustable. Detail of the sleeve drawstrings. I also did that in a terry. Rope grommets for the exits for the ties. That's important. And I used a snap for the closure. So that was a jacket. It's quite a color. This one had a lot of fit issues, and I actually had to cut into it. See, the armhole was extremely tight and high. There are the specs, graded specs, comments, and then here are the fit comments. Bust too tight, waist too tight. Here are the revised specs, graded, pattern corrections. That's part of the raglan sleeve. This is the back of the garment. And then the second fitting, which, oh, I added an inside facing view because the professor required it. So this is when you open up the garment, what do you see inside? I use this really nice acrylic blend. I like wearing this in the winter too. And that's the jacket with the dress on. Pretty cool. Specs, and then fit comments. It was still a bit tight, so I had to open up at the princess seam. Revised pattern corrections. And that's that for the technical design class. I won't go into too much detail about browseware, but I will show you the final projects for that class. So all of us had to use some standard pattern blocks to draft these pajamas. And then we had to practice placing different stitch types, arranging the pieces on the avatar flat, and then using stitching to link them. And then you press dress, and then the fabric pieces actually come together. It's really cool to watch. And then we also practiced putting it in different colorways. That's the other helpful thing about 3D rendering, is that you can look at it in different colors at the blink of an eye. My final is a sneak peek at my actual thesis project. So we had to basically design something on our own, and so I decided to move ahead and start a draft for my thesis project. Now, I'll go through the requirements for the thesis in a little bit, but I basically decided to create a dress and a shawl specifically for breastfeeding mothers. So this is a very rough draft, but this is what I created. Here's my concept and my customer, my fabric. I settled on 100% merino wool. These are the flats for the garment. So again, the design inspiration was definitely prevalent from the knit dress that I created that same semester. So wherever you can consolidate, and the earlier you could start working on your thesis, the better. I highly, highly recommend. And then this is the actual garment. So this was really fun to create and present, and that is the perfect segue right into my thesis. I wanted to show you this picture of the studio. Captured this at some point in the afternoon, and I think it's just, it made the space where we spent so many hours look so beautiful with all the mannequin arms stacked up. In the spring semester of my junior year, I decided that I wanted to put a bit more research into my project to make it more credible before I actually created it. My goal with my thesis was not only to create a good-looking project, but I wanted to create a product that I could potentially sell in the future. So in the spring of my junior year, I reached out to my soon-to-be mother-in-law, Julia Neidhart, amazing data scientist, one of the most incredible women I know, and she wrote an entire survey to send out to anyone in the public who has breastfed. So that spring and summer, I sent out a Google form with questions regarding functionality and fashion, because my goal was to create a garment that doesn't compromise on personal style and femininity, but is also versatile for the needs of nursing mothers. The survey was probably 30 questions, I believe, and I got almost 150 responses from many moms in my life over a couple of months. So this was the summer before my senior year. I'm really, really glad I did that early, because if I tried to start data collection even in the fall, it would have been too late for the spring, because the spring is you're just pattern making, sewing, fitting, and then you present your thesis. It's so fast. So this is the slideshow that she created for me. You can also watch my video on my thesis, which I will link. We included personal variables like age and family size. We identified key themes of ease of access, but also modesty and discretion was a huge piece of it. Style and variety, comfort and fit. We use a combination of quantitative and qualitative data collection, which basically means on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is this? But also providing text boxes for women to give their own responses. Oh, this was cool too. She punched in some of the data into AI, and the AI created descriptions of potential garments that could work. I think the Versa dress is probably the closest thing to what I actually created in the end. The versatility between casual and professional environments. We had 144 responses. I hope you don't mind my brother jamming out over there. Okay, so here are numbers. I find this fascinating. You can skip ahead if you don't. We had 144 respondents. Average age of respondents was 38.7. Minimum age 22. The median was 36. About 82% of the mothers that answered were between 25 and 45, which makes sense. That's peak childbearing age. And then 2.43 was the mean number of children. And I found this kind of funny because it's not data that I necessarily used, but 347 total children nursed and 475 and a half total years of breastfeeding. That's a long time. And then all of these are just distribution charts for all of the questions pertaining to different themes. Like, how challenging was it to access your breasts? Finding supportive nursing clothing seems to be a bigger challenge. Finding discreet nursing clothing seems to be paramount. And then these were yes and no questions. How challenging was it to find clothing suitable for your body shape or size? That was a big issue. So I needed something that would fit many different body shapes. Many moms felt like their personal style was compromised. 125. They had trouble finding comfortable nursing clothing for formal occasions. And then ethically and sustainably produced was somewhat of a concern. And then I found this to be a really easy way to visualize how many times certain words or concepts came up. Ease of access and style and variety are by far the top ones. Okay, so it was a 20-question survey. These are some competitive brands. I specifically asked for brand names to research the competition. So that's it for the survey. So based on that data analysis, with the help of my computer professor, I was able to draft a pattern in Blouse where I think it was towards the end of the fall and beginning of the spring, for a raglan sleeve empire waist dress that unwraps only at the top. It took a lot of thought, and I spent many nights in bed turning it around in my head and figuring out how I was going to sew it and how it would fit and where to put what. And then I came up with this. So I'll show you the tech packs for the first and second fittings. Oh, I forgot to mention, a huge part of computer pattern making is digitizing, which is basically this big board where you tape your paper pattern pieces onto it, and you use a wand to plot the points, and every time you press the button, it creates a point in the computer. So you're taking the actual size pattern and putting it into the computer so that you can edit it in the computer. And then there's this thing called a plotter, which is basically a super wide printer, and then that prints out the pattern for you. So I did do some digitizing for this project from existing paper patterns. These are my design images, call out sketches, pleats. So I essentially adapted that from my prior style. Call out sketches, fabric and trims. These are the specs. Graded specs, revised specs, and here are the sample photos. So I did the first sample in a cotton t-shirt fabric. As you can see, it doesn't fit the best. Skirt hiking, bodice had a lot of issues. Armhole too high. The side seam was swinging backwards. And then I did a construction comment to put facing in the back. These are the style comments and the pattern corrections. Front skirt. The back is all one piece. The bodice, sleeve, bodice waistband. And then this is the first fitting of the shawl. That didn't have too many fit issues because it was pretty simple to, I created that one in the computer as well. There's the image. It's kind of like a bat wing shawl. And then I did this for measurements because I figured if I need to make two sizes, I can, but the whole thing will just be in one size, so you don't really even need a spec sheet. There's the fabric, specs, graded specs, and then revised. There were only a couple minor revisions, like lengthening the sleeve. That's the actual shawl on top of the dress. Fit comments, photo comments. also comments, and then the pattern corrections. The back is all one piece, but the front is sewn on down here and at the shoulders. The second fitting was basically the same thing. I created that in the actual merino wool fabric that I had ordered from Italy. And that was what my model wore for the video, and that was what she tested. So also, as a part of the research, I wanted to give my garments to a mother that was actually currently breastfeeding, for her to test it for 2 weeks or so, and then give me a review that I could include in the video. So I got my second fitting done as early as possible so that she had time to test, review, and then for me to edit it into my video. I might as well just show you the slides that I presented at my thesis presentation in April. This was my video, sketches, and this is all basically a truncated version of a tech pack. Fabrics, all the specs listed, sample images for the first fit, photo comments, fit comments. These are the digital patterns, so this is what the patterns look like in Browseware. Here's the Browseware fit. I was on the verge of tears trying to make this fit my avatar because the computer doesn't really understand what I was trying to do with the wrap. So I must have spent at minimum 4 hours trying to figure out how to make the waistband fit. The final project on my friend with the shawl. Special thanks. So that's the thesis. It doesn't look like a lot of material, but it is a ton of work because you have to do the video, and I also added on some extra stress for myself. I got sick 4 times. I mentioned one other class that you take along with the thesis that's taught by the head of the department. It's basically a production and technical design class. In my opinion, it was kind of like a recap of everything that we had learned in the technical design program. I didn't learn a lot of new information, but the head of the department is honestly really chill, and so she's not going to give you too much of a hard time over the tiny assignments because she knows that your thesis is the most important. So that was one saving grace. But overall, I am very pleased with the quality of my education. If anything, I would have slowed down a little bit and focused a little bit more on the details of larger projects. It felt like a lot of small projects, like they were trying to hit a lot of major points in a very small amount of time. Granted, it is practically a 2-year bachelor's degree, so there is a lot of information that they have to cram in there. But my classes combined with the fall internship and my job in the spring really made me understand exactly what technical design is, why I want to do it, and how I can adapt it into my own personal goals for the future with my own brand potentially. I forgot to mention that in the fall, you're required to either take a sweater knits class, which is using knitting machines, or you do an internship. I decided to do the internship because I wanted to gain as much real world experience as I could. So that was my first exposure to an actual technical design job. I worked at Love Shack Fancy. My boss was amazing. My coworkers were incredible. I loved the people that I worked with. It was a very chaotic season because it was September to December, and so they were trying to get everything done before holiday break. It shaped me up in a way that the slow pace of classes wouldn't, but I got to apply the knowledge that I had learned in my technical design classes easily. It's tiring work. Technical design is not a fast process. It's time consuming, but it's crucial in order to get the product that you want, in order to make the money that you want. So although I would have enjoyed a bachelor's in fashion design, I personally think that the program was so saturated because the focus is on creative work, which is great. But technical design taught me the hard skills of sample development and quality control that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. In my honest opinion, technical design training will enhance your work as a fashion designer, but fashion design training won't necessarily equip you for a technical design job. I can employ my creativity whenever I want. I didn't feel like I needed the training to be creative. I think people have diverse perspectives on their own education and their goals. For some, it's to create a body of work that they can use to work their way up in the creative design world if they want to be a fashion designer or especially a creative director. And that's mainly what the fashion design BFA is for. My approach was more pragmatic. I wanted to spend my time gaining concrete technical skills that I can use to execute my creative vision in the future. I think there's a time for everything, and I'm so glad that I spent my time at FIT gaining those very practical skills so that I have a fully equipped toolbox for my future endeavors. I also want to be versatile. I want to be able to help others execute their creative vision and be a valuable team player wherever I am. I would encourage anyone that's passionate about fashion and inclined towards pattern making, sewing, engineering, to pursue an education in technical design. I think FIT is equipping industry leaders of the next generation in a very practical way. Even their fashion design program is much more pragmatic than some other design schools might be. It's a public university, it's a SUNY school, so it's very accessible for local commuters. Although I'm coming from New Jersey, I didn't get to pay in-state tuition, but it was still worth every penny. And spending these few hours, days really, looking at more than 4 years of work is humbling. I still feel like I'm so young and I still have so much to learn, but I actually have come far, and none of that was for nothing. None of it was in vain, but I know that this is the only beginning of what God has for me in his plan, and I'm so excited to take this to the next level. And I encourage anyone that is interested in technical design to just go for it. It really felt like a family in technical design because there were only 35 of us. So we all knew each other, we supported each other, we were in the studio for hours together, and I don't think I would have gotten that experience within a larger major. So I'm exceedingly grateful for that, and I'm looking forward to continuing to be colleagues with my friends. At least those who stay in New York City, because this industry is small and it's shrinking. All that being said, if you made it through this entire video, kudos to you. If you could only listen to a limited amount of my yapping, also kudos to you. I just wanted to make this video for anyone that's exploring, and I hope that you found some piece of my experience helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day.